Thank you guys for coming today, and just know that any questions you have, any things that you're concerned about, we're going to address them and make sure that you get all of those pieces taken care of. Okay, so I'm sharing my screen, and if you can see this, this is just my update, and I'll be closing stuff out. That if you can see it, can you give me a Y in? That's just checking for understanding. You're going to be doing that with your students. I have a different background just because I'm in my room. My children are shelter in place with me. So that's why sometimes this is beneficial, because if you are in weird spaces, as we are all sheltering in place, this is a way to handle it. But for those of you who need to demonstrate stuff, just know that that might not be a piece. Okay, so this is block schedule, and I'm doing this currently, so what you're seeing is a PowerPoint I'm using in real time. So with my students being virtual and switching to a closed, we defined what we call it. So if you have a name for your classroom, for your groups, for a certain time in your school day, that is a fantastic thing to label this time. And so we called it adventure instruction because we are taking an adventure and I'm putting them on a block schedule where they're not accustomed to. You get to put what you need. One of my suggestions is whatever PowerPoint or whatever Google Slides or whatever format you are giving, make sure things are consistent. You don't want to be having students with all these different ideas, because this is just like your door, right? So when they're coming digitally and they see this, they're going to see your first slide there for them. Let's look at classroom expectations. So I always make sure we go through that. I'm going to show you two different options of what I do. You are adjusting this for what works for your students. So if you have language already in place, use that language. I gave you what I'm using. You can pare this down. For kindergarten, it could be use kind words, right? Share, try your best, that kind of thing. You can do it in a bulletin board. You can do it in a more formal piece like here. Either way, this is their commitment with you during that live session of what you're expecting them to do. This is transitioning them to learning time. So does anyone have any questions about why write the expectations or what this is for? Okay, so you're giving me a Y that, or you would have, my students give me a green check mark or whatever. You'd be asking students to give you a Y. So like you are now, that you can see this, you understand, and we can move forward, and you're putting that in the check box now. The reason why I'm having you do that too is that as I'm talking, you're giving them wait time during this, right? We're transitioning them to the learning environment. They're stepping away, they know it. You can also see who's having issues with technology, right? Because they're answering later. You can notice that Johnny didn't respond to you, that kind of thing, and make notes. Okay, so I always have an objective and agendas piece. Because our schools are closed, you might not necessarily want to tether that to standards necessarily. I write in I can statements.
Hey, Anna, there's a question about where you created the slide with the Post-its.
Yeah, and that slide with the Post-its, I just copied and pasted from the internet. I just augmented them.
Sorry, and then can you put it in presenter mode so the screen's a little, the slide's a little bit bigger?
Yeah. Does that help everyone?
Yeah, that's perfect.
Perfect. Okay, so my objective here, typically I have a student read part of it. So I can discover new concepts and revisit what I know in math and language arts. That would be for your students. You can do whatever your I can statements. I can apply what I know to the real world, right? Because I'm making those connections because I'm doing this as a block. So then I am giving them the agenda, which is this lower part. Say hi, math, language arts, adventure time, and takeaways. And so the reason why you're doing this, and I can't stress this enough, is you're covering this work because you're wanting to put them in a format. You're giving them the agenda, your slides are consistent, they're gonna see this again and again, and you can be super specific if you're just doing like language arts time, or if you wanna break this up further, you can be more diverse in what you're answering, depending on whatever your district says. Is everyone good? Any questions on setting it up, slides?
Yeah, there's questions about sort of how you keep track of everything. Now, I know you guys use Blackboard, which has more kind of features to check in on students. And,
Right.
and yeah.
But that, yeah, so how I do it, because we do use Zoom and some of these other things, because I do tutoring and all this stuff, and especially in this mode, reaching out to other teachers. Some of the things is what I'm modeling. So I'm looking, I can see the chat on the right-hand side. So when you guys are reading these questions, I can see them. Second thing is you know your students. That's the beautiful thing about it being this time in the year. You know Johnny, you know Susie, you know whatever. I have a Post-it notes, or I have my roster in front of me and I can check things off the list. A Google Classroom, you don't have to use this as PowerPoint. You can use this in Google Slides. All I'm doing is sharing my screen. That's all I'm doing. And so, yeah, so there's other features. Some people are using WebEx. Some people are using Adobe Connect. Whatever way whatever communication platform, all you're doing is sharing your screen, and all of those pieces have it. Yes, that's all I'm doing. Okay.
I've had a few people ask, will they have access to this PowerPoint?
Yes, it will. Once this recording goes live, it'll be in a link on the bottom. It'll look like a PDF, so it's easy for you to scan.
Perfect.
One of the things that I want to keep reminding you is that when we're setting the stage, just like we are now, and when I asked you for those whys, just like I asked, that's where I would be checking. In smaller sessions on Zoom, you can actually ask, they can raise their hand, they can get a green check mark. We have those functions turned off for this purpose. You will have access to it. You can turn, if you're using Google Hangout, right, as your platform, or Google Meet, they also have features, so kids can't just be talking. That's one of the beautiful things about this. On Monday, I did do a webinar on exclusively classroom management and behaviors, and I can also do another one again, and we can put that on the piece. So we can dive into that as well. So kids have said yes to me. They understand what's expected of them. We're going to transition into the next piece. Okay, so checking in. We're in this critical time that, regardless of the platform that you guys have been a part of and that you know, we need to make sure we're doing a serious check-in, because we want to know the well-being of our students. Your districts are giving you guys different directives on when or how you're seeing your students. Some of you guys are using platforms like this where you can actually have them turn their cameras on. Others are doing it other ways. Whatever way you're working is fine, but our kids are great at communicating with us. How are you doing? Name the feeling you have now. You could be, for like kinder first, second, you can actually put on the slide a smiley face, a sad face, those kinds of things, just like you would have in your classroom. What have you been doing since yesterday? I see my students every day, so I do a check-in, and what's your plan for today? We really want to check on that social emotional well-being, because we know different kids are in different things. At the top, we set a timer. I set a timer. I could do that with an online timer. I could do that on my phone, where I have an app that does the Jeopardy weight. I can, any way you want to do that is fine. But I explicitly tell them the time to take on how to do this. And once I've established this is our new normal, all of these pieces get put into place. All of these things are told again and again. So they get that language, right? How are you doing? Naming your feeling. What have you been doing since yesterday? Maybe it's since our last meeting. And if they see this consistently, you're going to get more of the responses you want to hear, that so you really know what's going on with the kid, and it's a way for them to express themselves. In every platform you are using, there is the ability as the host to click private for whatever you're doing. Yeah, so then that's just the host, right? I'm the teacher. We're the ones that can see this. We have it open so you guys can see each other, and you can open and close and open and close. It's very beneficial with working in the classroom, especially when we get into the content itself, because you can have a timer that goes off, open up room chat, have everyone press enter, just like they would if they switched their Fantastic. Let's look at the next slide. So saying hi, this is a time where kids can turn on the mic and share out. They could say hi, they could share a prompt, they could point to something. You could have, you know, like we've done this where I say, what's your favorite season? Or what's your favorite coronavirus binge snack? Or what's your favorite movie? Or name 3 things that are next to you at that moment, or anything like that. This is that fun, get the wiggles out. They get to do this. You know your kids, you know your students, you know how they behave, you know who's the ones that are going to be struggling with this, you know who's going to be calling things out, not necessarily the way you want to. And part of that is really knowing your students and then adjusting accordingly. Does that make sense? If you are using Google Classroom, you could actually have this or any of your PowerPoints as documents, right? Where everyone could share, and then they could all, you know, put their initials on there. Or they could point to it, or they could circle with it, or something like that. That way you're getting the right responses for the kids, right? Some kid or kinder first, second who don't necessarily have typing capability and anything like that can point with their pointer. They can, you know, choose red or yellow. They can say it out loud. There's lots of different ways to augment. You know your best practices. You're just translating it to, I'm telling you through the computer instead of right in front of you.
Margaret's got a question about younger students, and is there an icon type page?
Yeah, so I would my go-to is Google Images. You know this because when you make newsletters and things, right? Like when you saw that green check mark, that's from an icon versus that kind. So this say hi could be 4 different colors. Which is your favorite? Purple, pink, turquoise, blue. And then you could have them point to it. You could have them say it out loud. Whatever way you want to do this, it depends on one of the things we have to be very conscientious about is I can give you every single thing to use. But if your district is saying you need to use this platform for X, Y, and Z, then use those platforms. Okay, let's adjust. So
your voice went out a little bit when you said Google, so nobody heard.
So Google, so I just get all the Google icons. Sorry about that.
Okay.
So here's an example of one of those highs that you could do on a Google slide or a PowerPoint you share out, whatever platform you're using. Our older kids could write what their favorite season is. Our younger kids could write the first letter of their name on the slide or say it out loud, like I like winter, and those kinds of things. You can make this as a questionnaire on Google Classrooms, anything like that that you want them to do. They could put the first letter of each word because most of your younger learners on live will have a parent, older sibling, someone else there to support them. Easy, manageable responses just to keep them in the flow, and then following up with the platform you have is super helpful. So this would be another way to do it. You could do, like yesterday we did ice cream flavors, so everybody wrote down what their favorite ice cream was, that kind of thing. And that just gets them ready. Okay, I know how to respond, so I can work out the kinks, you can hear me, they can hear you, you kind of can tell that your kids are ready to go, and then we switch on over. So if I am saying, if this is math corner, a K through 12 could be naming the shapes or describing the shapes or whatever the standard is, where our 3 through 5 kids might get something like write the number in standard form. Those are things you've been revisiting. I made this slide so you can see it. So my math slide outside of what I'm asking them to do always looks the same. You're always going to see that math icon. You're always going to see that it's math corner. You're always going to see what I want them to do. And oftentimes I am giving them what I want them to do. And then I'm following up with, when you're working independently, this is the work we're going to do. Just like you did when you were standing before them. Does that make sense? So The writing piece is depending on your platform. In Zoom, there's not a capability of doing that. You would have to create something like a Google document that you could share out to each of your students. They could have open and ready to go. If you're in WebEx, Adobe Connect, Blackboard, and some of these other platforms, they have icon capability where they can do that. So it depends on your platform, but your go-to is you can make this, or just the slides you want them to answer. You can have that prepped where every one of your students has a copy where they could be answering it in real time. Any other questions for right now?
No, I think that was the writing one was the last question there.
Okay. We did have a question about what I'm doing. So our school, the school that I work at, is currently closed. So the curriculum that we have access to, we're not using. I personally maintenance a Google website for my students where they know how to access. Because I've completely deviated from our typical curriculum, they actually have what I call this adventure instruction. So on my website is an adventure instruction folder, and then I've been uploading the work each day, but I have 7th graders. So if you looked on there, you'd be like, oh, that's scrambled. It's not for them because I made it into a scavenger hunt for them. So it's not supposed to be in order and neat and nice. When you're creating this, because most of you, from what I'm seeing, is using Google Classroom, I say make a Word document, a Google Doc, and making a checklist, and then hyperlinking or embedding what you want them to do. Does that make sense? So I'm completely deviating from any content. You can use what you already have. Like I pulled a ton of math standards in science, and I made them all PDFs. And then I showed them how to, that they could print out. So I can either mail it to my students. Some of them have printers. They can work on that piece there. So there's a lot of opportunities. All of my students are on Khan Academy all the time. So they know how to already do that. So when I assign that, that's not a big deal.
So somebody asked me another question about where you get your content and your curriculum from. I know you guys get a lot of stuff from K-12, and you mentioned Khan Academy. Are there other resources?
So there's tons. What's beautiful thing about right now, with the most unforeseen circumstances, that all the things that were once paid subscriptions are all free. Brain Pop and the art and IXL and anything you could possibly think of, Schoolology. And if you Google in right now, K-5 resources, millions of things come up because they are giving us free access under this distant learning platform, whatever you're comfortable with. My suggestion is you use 1 or 2 things. You cannot, no one has transitioned from brick and mortar to homeschooling. That's not what this is. This is crisis education because we're in a global pandemic, which is a very different way of educating our students. This wasn't rolled out for them. You guys are still working on things. Everyone needs a grain of salt. Having slides be consistent, having content be consistent, having the communication be consistent is so important because everyone's dealing with a lot. And it's helpful because you know your students, you know what routines work well in the classroom. And we're just translating that into a digital setting rather than just seeing everything that you do. And it's overwhelming for you. You guys have your kids at home, you have your spouses at home, you have all these other things. We want to keep those. And the resources you guys are sharing are great. Okay, so Math Corner, you can make, if you're going to say you're going to do one of these shapes for kindergarten to recognize, right? You had gone through all the shapes. This is our check-in. We're now in April. Our students should know about right now. We're checking their progress, even if we're not penalizing them, right? You could have a circle and be the only thing on a slide. You could have one thing. I just combined it to show you the differences. You could put anything you want. You can put 2 + 2. Show me how that is. You can have the kids write. I also use GoFormative because that is a way in real time where I can recreate this. It's free. Short answer, multiple choice, they can do that. My caution for you is if your students are struggling with just getting online, adding extra tools might not be beneficial. Having them write it down on a piece of paper, like math, we're gonna do these 3 questions, 1, and they write circle or they write a C or they say it and you jot it down, yes, they all got it, is better. Doing too much can be overwhelming. There's lots and lots of tools to help you with this, but that's what I would keep it in. For our students, we're just making sure they're still engaged in the learning process, right? We're not wanting to see regression. We're not wanting to see kids disengage just for the sake of disengaging. So be fun with this, but I on purpose don't have a lot on the slide because it's distracting. Does that make sense? When I typically teach, I don't teach with my video on because my students are saying, which background are you having today? Why don't you have a flower in your hair, Miss Cordero?
A little bit of a bad connection right now. Having a hard time hearing you.
Aren't you wearing lipstick today? I get all of these other distracting things. So during that, what's our eyes on the slide at hand? I would never suggest more than 3 questions per person. Let me see if I can adjust. Yes. Okay. Let me see if I can.
So at the beginning of this, Ann and I were talking about, if this happens, you're going to get a real-time example of how you deal with it. So I think she's switching over to something else. So she's out and hopefully she will come back in with a better connection. Just going to pause the recording.
So this happened last time because of I'm the one that's sharing. And when I switched it to me being the one that shares, like that I'm the host, not the co-host. I don't know if you know how to switch that. That made the internet easier if you know how to do that.
I told him it was a real life example of,
it is a real life example.
These things are going to happen all the time. I was trying to host a WebEx meeting.
And we're going to address all the things. This is going to happen. Everybody's online. Every single person's online right now.
And depending on what platform you're using, it may be completely overwhelmed.
And a lot of people are doing this. Yeah. And any background's going to be distracting because you're focused on me instead of not. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop my video because once we hit content, I don't ever have it on again until the end because it is distracting, right? Because I'm reading what you're saying. I'm working on those pieces. Okay, so I'm going to go back and I'm going to talk about this. And I am going to reshare my screen where we were. We're going to go from here and we're going to go current slide. And then I'm going to look at all the pieces. Okay.
And that's a good tip too about if you're having connection issues, turning off your video helps being able to hear better.
Absolutely, because you want to have it as low tech as you can. Okay, so I'm going to let me address a few things as I am getting back on track. So one of the things that I want to highlight for you is that technical issues are going to happen in period. Our broadband systems across the state and the nation, I haven't reshared yet, so just be careful, aren't ready for all of us to be working because lots of families are working from home digitally. And so those are just pieces you're going to be considerate of. One of the things that's paramount to do is when you are presenting content, when we're not in those modes of, okay, we shared with our friends, we turn back off everything. Kids don't have video, kids don't have mics, kids don't have chats. Because it works the same way as when someone comes from the office, brings you a note, and all the kids are like, what are they doing? What is she saying? My suggestion is if you're going to what you are want the kids to touch is what you're going to teach. So if right now, for week 1, the only thing you're having your students doing is language arts and math, then the only thing you need to present on is language arts and math. If you are having them do an extension, I would front load it here. Or you can do a small video and post it to your Google Classroom or something like that, because your students are no longer accustomed to reading instructions, whether it's reading instructions independently, reading instructions right. Our classrooms have so much of that audible visual pieces in place, and they're making those learning adjustments too. Okay, so to recap, because I know we had technical issues, the math corner, I wouldn't do no more than 3 different questions, because that'll take a long time, because you need to give them think time and to work out the problem independently, to come back to respond to you. I give for students between 2 and 3 minutes each question I ask. So if I want a kindergartner to label the circle, right, tell me what shape this is, and I only put the circle on there, that child needs 2 minutes. And that looks like my mic is completely off, and I am not giving any more instructions than that. I give them, once that timer goes off, whether it is, I have a timer on my phone, or there's tons of free apps that you can use for timers that will make noise, like the Jeopardy song, that can help them with what that time sounds like. If you don't have the ability to have one online, Blackboard has it, Adobe Connect, WebEx has it. You can also share your screen with the timer, but that can get, sometimes that's a lot. So do that. Give them the think time. Once that timer is up, you give them the directions. Now, everybody on their screen who's in this class will give me we'll type their answer in the chat. So the way you would do that is, okay, everyone's going to write, what is the pink shape? And so now everyone would be like, you all, we're going to model this, right? What is the pink shape? And you type it in. Kids could say it out loud. You could give everyone, if you have kindergartners, you can give everybody mic privileges, make it all yell at each other. And then you turn all the mics right back off. That's a perfectly acceptable way, because in these live sessions, just like when you're presenting at the carpet in front with the document camera, however way you're doing that classroom, you're not grading them here, right? We're not evaluating, we're getting them engaged in the learning. So once this is done, you're 2 to 3, you have those pieces in, you're going to transition. Okay, everyone, are you ready? Now I always do breathing techniques, right? We're going to take a deep breath in and out, and we're going to switch on over to, and then they will know, right? You're going to be modeling this first. We're going to switch on over to language arts. When you do this in a pattern, my students have been on this block schedule for 2.5 weeks. They tell me, what are we doing now? We're doing ELA, and they would all type it in, or they would all point to it, or whatever the way that I'm asking them to. Yeah. And so then we switched over. One of the things that I really like, and I'm highlighting this because there's a lot of creative ways. So I teach 7th grade. I actually taught this lesson. You can see the comprehension questions are going to be different for you based on your grade level. So this is Storyline Online. They have tons of professional celebrities, actors, and things that read stories out loud. The reason why I like this better than the free Audible is because it's more like reading Rainbow, where they're walking through the pieces and they're doing, and the actor or actress stops and goes, I wonder what's going to happen next. That's interesting how the author, how the character blank responded. My students are looking at this. The reason why we're pulling it is because 7th grade, we're doing cross-curricular concept meets, is what I call them. They know that. They that concept. They can see what's happening historically. They can see what's happening in literature. They can see that in the real world and making those connections. And they know that's a concept meet. It's beautiful when they do that. What I do is this. I give them what it is. So As Fast as Words Can Fly was the book that was read. Storyline's amazing because they also show you the pictures. So it's not someone sitting there reading the book. It actually does it like reading Rainbow. I pulled grade appropriate comprehension questions, front loaded that for the students, as you can see on the board. I gave them the link. My 7th graders can independently listen to that story, and that helps with tech problems. I share my screen, they play the book. This is a longer book, right? This is our 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, you could use it. It's about a boy during who's in the South who gets treated poorly, and we talk about racism and all these other things. But you can do this with any book. The beautiful thing about Storyline and other platforms like this is they're doing that reading work that can be difficult, right? A kid, if I was sitting here reading you this story, you might not be able to see the pages. They don't have a copy of it, right? And scouring the internet to try to find a PDF version of it is problematic, where when whoever the actor or actress is who's reading the story does show all those pictures in real time. And by putting it on your Google Classroom assignment of what we covered today in class, they can rewatch it, they can go over it again. You can have them in real time answer certain questions. So like, what does the vocabulary word upstander mean? We've been focused on vocabulary. What's the takeaway of that story? That's language my students know. You know those choice words, your best practices, and also match that. I say be as creative and engaging as you want. This still meets a ton of standards. We could pull tons and tons of language arts standards by doing these things. Some other things that I've done, I've pulled, and they have them online, like the Pixar shorts, and they have my students. Now, your students, depending on grade level, might not do this, but I made story plot lines where they had to go through the rising action and label every part of it, of that 3-minute video. You can be as creative as you want because you're wanting that engagement. You want them to be happy to be learning. So when you give those, what I call the extension activity, right? With that independent work that they're doing, that they can go here and see that work, right? That they can now go because they're charged up, they're engaged, they know what they need to do, and then you springboard them in what they need to do.
Yeah, there was a question about, are there other websites like Story Online? Julie suggested Pebble Go and CPA Stone and Epic Books for primary.
Yep, all those are really great. Everything's available right now. There is, if you click
Capstone.
Yes, and if you do ESL Reader, that for like older kids, that is really beneficial because that is, you know, fifth through 8th, who you want them to do some novel reading. I like that because it slows it down, it speeds it up. So for those chapter readings will be made available that they can actually slow it down. So when we have our English language learners, when we have our kids with IEPs that need that extra support, they can slow down the reading and they have the chapter book text with it. Don't give them the website. You need to make sure you're being very direct because all of these sites are fantastic. But I would never give a kindergartner, first or second grader this book to read independently or even in a classroom. We wouldn't do that. And these sites have so much stuff. And if a kid is told, okay, this is the website your teacher wants to use, parents don't necessarily know that this isn't Starfall or ABC Mouse or any of those ones where they can do independent work. So that is why you see that I've put here the actual link itself. I want you to not look on storyline.net. I want you to hear this book and I want you to answer these questions. You can do this in class. This block schedule could be, this is independent time. You give them time to work on it where you're monitoring Google Documents over a course of period of time because you have, right? Because we have to do it with minutes. Yeah, whatever the way it is, but clicking on a link and having them open it up is so much easier than clicking on a link and going, okay, wait, where on this website is it?
So what is the actual website for ESL Reader?
I can give it to you at the end.
Okay.
We'll finish this and I'll give it to you at the end. Because remember, lots of these sites that are free are K through 8 or K through 12, and you have to remember that they really mean it, right? Brain Pop right now, using those kinds of websites, say you're going to do a science extension, or you really need to cover grammar at this point in time, right? That's part of your ELA corner. We have the same icon. We're putting just what we need to do. We're moving forward. You want to make sure you're cherry picking because Brain Pop has health studies. Brain Pop, for some of our families, have chosen not to, right? We have such a differentiation of whom is getting what information, right? Some families know what's going on. Other families have not shared all that out. So letting them just go can be very problematic. That's why we're being so specific. And you're managing their time, right? You wouldn't over assign homework, giving them the appropriate amount, because we are teaching in a crisis situation, no, I have not found that, because I'm giving them the exact link and I'm testing that link. But if you are not testing those links, that's where the problems come in. I saw a hand up. Can you type what you?
Yeah, Margaret put her hand up.
Let's see what we want. Yeah. So that's the thing. You want to be, it's okay, very specific on what you're asking them to do. So everyone knows exactly what I'm assigning right now. We're going to read this, right? We're going to watch it together. I share my screen and we watch it in real time. My students, because they're old enough, I give them the link. So if they're having a delay, the video isn't showing well because their broadband's low, or they happen to be living in an apartment where those signals are crossed, they have it also posted. So like for me, it's in our adventure instruction folder on their classroom website. For you, that might be your Google, right? Classroom. That might be on your Google document that you created for this week's work. Whatever place it is, you want to have it in the live session. You want to have that tangible for them where they need it. Okay, so my students under Blackboard can write directly on the whiteboard when I give them this phrase, right? This is my extension. This doesn't necessarily have to do with the book, but we're extending out what does the word words are things mean to you? You could have this as a Google Doc that everyone has a copy of, that they're writing their answer and they're typing that out. That is possible. You could have it as, I want you to know that over the course of the next week, as we're reading these stories, we're going to continue to answer what we think words or things mean. It can be a place where you're giving that extension. You could make a screenshot of the worksheet you want them to work on next. You can do whatever it is. You're transitioning out of the classroom, right? The I do and the we do and the you do, you're front loading just like I'm front loading here. The slides are simple. Everyone can read this. This is easy to understand. When I give those instructions to my students, they know I'm giving them the question, I'm giving them the tools, the action steps, I'm checking for understanding, and then they're going and doing it. It's a really excellent way to front load the content they're working on. Any questions on how I am transitioning students, how I'm presenting stuff, because you're getting that feedback in real time. So any questions on what we're doing for math, language arts in that block?
I don't see any questions.
Do not see any questions. That's fantastic. No. If you're ready to transition, you're giving me a Y in the chat.
Margaret wants to know what a good time frame is. Like, how long would you do a block?
Okay, so my 7th graders do block with me for 90 minutes. But I'm going to show you why. I do an hour of my stuff. About an hour to do. We're extending it out because my students you can tell it's crisis mode. They actually are asking to go over a novel. We're actually doing a novel read right now. So it's a little bit longer. My suggestion is in the block, if you're front loading, it would be, I would schedule it for an hour and then I wouldn't instruct that whole time. Does that make sense? So our kindergartners, they're going to need longer time online with you for the sheer fact that they need that process time to do the action they need, right? If they have Chromebooks, right, because most of the world is doing that, it's going to take them a while to find the why on their piece if they're not getting that support, or they're getting some support but they want them to do it, or the number one. You're giving lots of breaks. I'm answering questions. You notice how we're stopping, we're answering questions. Lots of times we're doing it. That clock is running. You're giving them 2 to 3 minutes between each action. That exercise that we just covered, the reading of the story is slow paced. It's a 13-minute reading. The students can hear that because the presenter actually takes those natural pauses, right? They take a pause. I stop the video and go, what do you think? And they tell me in the chat, and we take and I'm not answering, and then they go on. That's crazy. 3 hours. I can't be online 3 hours straight.
But that can't be in a row. Is that like 3 hours throughout the day with breaks in between? Because that's just, there's no way kinder person could do that.
That would make sense. So my suggestion is, like, if you're, because districts are saying different things, correct? Like for example, I have older students, so they're with me 90 minutes. My MOU says I only have to teach 60. I'm going to show you why I do the extra 30. But if you're being told you have to contact them, one of the suggestions that I would make, I wouldn't do anything over 90 minutes. And I give my students, I'm going to front load this for you, their adventure time is 20 full minutes of an action, of a fun activity.
And that's part of your 90 minutes.
Yes. And that's part of my 90 minutes because I'm getting them excited about what we need to do. And I am capitalizing on the fact that I get more leeway, right? We're not as tethered, as focused on the standards and preparation. And so I am consistent, you guys, consistency. We don't have pomp and circumstance on our slides. We don't have pomp and circumstance in what we're teaching them. I know, right? I have lots of friends who are educators all over the state. And one of my very best friends, who's also my cousin, is a transitional kindergarten teacher, and she wants to make every PowerPoint just have right? She wants to have a whole Paw Patrol one and a whole Snoopy one, and that's distracting. We just want them focused on what they need to be doing, and we want them focused and said on what they need to take away, because you do the same thing in front of them, right? You're writing the math problem on the board. They're showing you their whiteboard. You pass out papers. That's their transition. And they're starting to work on the work and you're monitoring them. That happens in the same time as an online schedule, right? Because you could be monitoring them off. If you need to add time because kids are supported, I would suggest an office hour time at the end of your day, a check-in in the afternoon or something like that, because so a place for students to come back and ask questions if you don't have another mechanism already, right? Google Classroom does have that chat function embedded in the classroom if the kids are able to do that or not. Sometimes it just doesn't translate it well, and you can share your screen and say, yes, you mean this? Because kids don't know how to say, I don't get this, right? How many times have you heard that as a teacher? I get that all the time. That's a piece that you can do because you can see, oh, you mean today's math? Okay, let me pull it up, which one? And then they can say the number just like they would be pointing to you. You want to make sure that you give yourself a brain break. You want to make sure that you're pacing it properly and that things are going the way that it should. So I only do math and language arts right now. I chose to give supported activities for science and history to be embedded. My students already got instruction. I just did a video for them to do that. But then but every day I give them adventure time. So adventure time is a 20-minute piece. You're going to be sending this out, right? We're going to do Scratch. That's coding. The kids love it because they can, make the cat or the penguin or whatever a, functional character that can move around. And it's very grade appropriate. It's very easy to use. You do not need to be a coder to know how. You're going to be sending this link, right? I'm saying, okay, we're transitioning again. It's adventure time. You're going to be giving that in the room chat. So everybody has that hyperlink access. So all the kids have to do is link it up. It opens in their window. They can make themselves a login. They don't have to. They could just play with it. If they don't have to, they don't have a parent that's available, you can't manage it. That's okay. This still works. I give them, now my students, because I use Blackboard, they get in breakout rooms. You can do that on Zoom as well. You can put them in breakout rooms and have them work together, have them work on their own, what have you. But I do it as a 20-minute time. They do that in real time with me, and I come and monitor what they're doing. Your comfortability has to do with whether or not your students can handle working in small groups. You know this. You've been with them all year. If they can't do it at random small groups, you can start out with everyone sharing their screen where they can work on this. They can go into a breakout room and they just click the share stream function in those breakout rooms, or you can just give them the link and they can work on it and they can show you at the end. There's ways to do things like I have a Padlet right now. That's a free function. You can only use 3 of them without paying, but delete it and move on. That's our digital art gallery. So kids are able to post all the things they're creating. You can do it anyway. They can post it to your Google Classroom. They could just play with this and just play with it. Does that make sense? You can do this with Cool Math. You can do this with ABC Mouse. You can do this with anything that you think deems correct. Once again, you want to have them have that fun, that social emotional, that enrichment, that ready, like that. I remember how school is. My teacher gives us lots of opportunities to learn, including all this fun stuff, that it doesn't just need to be, and it breaks them down. And then when they're ready to transition out and start, that's helping. Okay. Once that 20 minutes is done and I'm transitioning, because I want to answer a few questions and we have 6 minutes left, is this. Here's the takeaway. Takeaway is after that 20 minutes, you bring all the kids back in. Hi, everybody. How you do? They can write in the chat. That was awesome. I liked it. Blah, blah, blah. And they can share it with their friends. You turn off the chat and it says, everybody ready? Right? Just like you would. Everybody ready to know our next steps? Right? That's just like you clapping. That's just like 1, 2, 3 eyes on me. Any of those things. So if you are ready for us to transition again, you're putting a lie into the chat. I'm being quiet because I'm watching you guys do it.
We've got about 5 minutes left.
Yeah, there's going to be a delay. There's a delay. Some of you guys heard that later. That's the other thing. That's why wait time is so important. 3 minutes of not talking feels like a very long time. It's not, because you're giving students brain think time, and also you're giving your broadband the ability. So the takeaway slide is the actions you want them to do. Some of you guys are doing live teaching, but you're not using classroom platforms, right? Especially our even transitional kindergarten through 2nd grade. A lot of them aren't getting where the kids might be doing Zoom on a personal device, right? Mom's phone or something like that. You might need to say, complete this packet. I want you to do 2 pages of math and 2 pages of ELA, and you send a math text message or a math email to all the parents. That's okay to say that to them, to direct them to do it. You're getting their buy-in. If you're like me, where you have a direction, I model that with the directions I give my students. You could be saying where that is for you. On Google Classroom, we're dealing with week 2 of distance learning, and you put week 2 and then the dates that we're talking about, and you write it down. So like my students are working on assignments in Adventure Instruction folder on the class website. Be sure to view the dates. Remember, I made it a scavenger hunt for my 7th grade. I've given them the link, and they know where the link is. They have it here. They have it in a Symbaloo page I made. I mean, they have it all these different places, and they get this emailed out to them at the end. Each day I email this out as a reminder. So I give them the recording, I give them the reminder for today because it's not school as usual, and then I do this. I always suggest sending the recording. I always suggest sending the recording because then you can see it over and over again.
There's a question about managing like all your screens. So if you're sharing your screen, can the students see your chat window?
No, because you can't see mine. You can't see what
yeah, that's true.
You guys, I can see it right now. No, it covers things some of the time, but no, the recording space, because you're not sending them the audible entity. You're sending them to link to get it. So most people, let's use Zoom because we're in Zoom. We're using it on the cloud, and right? I'm stopping to share now. They're using it on the cloud. That cloud gives you an email of the recording for today. You give them the hyperlink. They can click it, and they go through it in real time. For students with specialized populations, or students where you know your families, right? We have families, like my household's an essential worker household, right? I'm an essential worker. My husband's a UPS driver. So our day and schooling happens very differently than another person who's not a non-essential worker who's working from home, a person family system where the parents are laid off, someone's caring for somebody, someone is, right, healthcare workers, those kind of things. The recording helps with the equity piece, and it helps for our students who need, right, like our English language learners and our special ed populations who need the repeat instructions. This naturally gives it. Does that make sense? You saw a link to my personal school website. That's that hyperlink. If you make a Google Classroom, you're going to give that, you're going to share with them in your system. You can post those Zoom links on there. There's lots of different ways of doing it. What the best advice I can give you with the semantics of this is, if your students have a student email all your students. Then shoot an email to the parent saying, I've emailed all your students, because most of those parents get the emails that you send the kids. Do then text, don't do then call. You need to streamline. How are you guys going to know what's at class? You made a Google Doc that you share out once a week, that you email out to the students. It's the same every week. When you make those habits of mine, it is super beneficial, because although we are all concerned about all the things, we're concerned about our welfare, we're concerned about that it's, a changing time for all of us. We're apprehensive about distance learning. We're apprehensive about the equity piece, because there is tons to be concerned about. And so what you do is you say, what can I give them that they are completely transparent and I have the most access to, because your kids will access it over and over again as they need. So it's not just one place. And if you stay that consistency, just like you are for homework, just like you are when you send these things out. And
management who checks to do the work.
I do that.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
So I do that. So my student, your students, just like when you do homework check, or just like when you're grading, you're just checking it digitally. You use the same rosters. You guys all know, right? You are the same rosters. You are the same. You have tons of tools, right? You have those rosters where you check off those assignments that you did for math. You have those rosters that you have to do those when you're grading papers at home, and you don't want to be on HomeLink or Aries or whatever your system is in play. You can do that. You can split it up. The block was just to show you that it's possible to teach multiple subjects in one. You can always split it up. You can always do an afternoon, like 20-minute check-in, right? You can say afternoon like I used to do it when I would do intervention with students. I did that with math, and I would do we would have milk and cookies with Miss Cordero. They knew that was the time that you would come in. It was like 2:00 in the afternoon, and they could come in and check on with me. And my slide was check in, and I would give them a prompt, one single slide, and then they would just private chat me, and we would just address whatever issues in real time. So that wasn't instructional based, just like when your kids come up to you at your desk or at the horseshoe table or whatever and ask those questions. So awesome.
So I know we've got to get this wrapped up, because you get to do this again in 13 minutes.
Yes. Absolutely.
And I want to thank everybody for being here. This will be available up on the IPD website.
And my
so
slides
check out that and many other awesome things that are there.
Yes. And those slides will be in a PDF attached to it. So be checking those comments. Awesome. Have a wonderful day. You guys got this.
Oh, and the ESL Reader website, you were going to give them that information.
Oh, yes. Hold on. I will do that real quick.
So I sing the Jeopardy theme. Do, do, do.
Yes. Here we go. Before we turn off that piece, that is there for you.
Awesome.
It has everything. That's for upper elementary through adult. It's specifically geared towards our English language learners. I also use it with my students who struggle with reading. I also do it with students who have that for 504s, IEPs, because it's the same intervention, right? You can read it slower, the text is slower, that kind of thing. It is free. Absolutely. I'm not going to give you any, right?
We like free.
We like free all the time.
Okay,
all right.
Go ahead and stop the recording.